They lived through an ice age without fire, and didn't die. Blizzards roared for months. The sun vanished for entire seasons. Winds sliced through animal hides like knives through paper. Even the mammoths fled south. But the Neanderthals stayed. In caves sealed with ice, in forests stripped bare, they endured temperatures that would stop a human heart in minutes. Their breath crystallized mid-air. Their skin burned from cold so deep it silenced nerve endings. No flicker of flame to chase the dark. No comfort of warmth and only instinct, muscle, and memory. And yet, bones buried beneath ancient frost tell us one thing. They survived. Again and again. For 400,000 winters. How did a species with fragile lungs, limited tools, and unreliable fire conquer a world built entirely to erase them? For centuries, the image of early humans has been painted by firelight. We imagine them huddled in caves, guarded by flames, the symbol of civilization itself. But the Neanderthals shattered that story. Across Europe, from the frozen valleys of France to the wind-carved plains of Germany, archaeologists found something missing. Ash, charcoal, burned bone, the fingerprints of fire absent. In hundreds of sites spanning nearly 400,000 years, Neanderthal layers revealed almost no signs of consistent burning. The temperatures were glacial, the seasons brutal, and yet they survived, evolved, and even thrived. This contradiction haunts scientists, because to live without fire is to live without light, heat, or cooked food, without protection from predators or disease. Modern humans wouldn't last a single week. So how did they do it? How did an ancient species with brains smaller than ours endure one of the coldest climates in Earth's history, while fire itself failed them? The answer, buried beneath layers of frost and time, would turn archaeology upside down. Because what we thought we knew about fire and about intelligence when it was about to change forever. But the evidence reveals something astonishing. The first clue emerged in Kolna Cave, a limestone hollow deep in the Moravian karst of modern-day Czech Republic. Archaeologists expected to find the black scars of campfires, but what they uncovered was far stranger. Stone tools, animal bones, hunting debris, yet not a single burned layer, not a trace of soot. The soil told a story of unbroken cold, year after year, century after century. In layers dated to 250,000 years ago, researchers discovered something remarkable. Deer bones split open in the same precise manner we use to extract marrow today. Each fracture was intentional, measured, methodical. It was survival through engineering, not heat. And as the pattern spread across sites, La Ferracie in France, Hoxton in England, Biach-Saint-Vaast in northern Europe, the same silence repeated. No hearths, no charcoal, no consistent flame. Instead, a toolkit of logic and adaptation. Stone flakes sharpened to surgical precision, hides cured with cold instead of fire, and meat preserved in the permafrost rather than cooked. Then came the find that changed everything. At the Schöningen site in Germany, preserved under layers of ancient mud, scientists discovered a wooden spear, 2.3 meters long, perfectly balanced, crafted for aerodynamic accuracy. Its tip hardened not by fire, but by friction and polish. The craftsmanship was mathematical. Carbon dating placed it at 300,000 years old, centuries before the first reliable evidence of human-controlled fire. That meant only one thing. Neanderthals didn't need fire to dominate their world. They had mastered the cold instead. And that was only the beginning. When archaeologists reconstructed the daily lives of Ice Age Neanderthals, one fact stood out like a scar across time. They were engineers of heat in a world of cold. Without dependable fire, they began manipulating nature itself, turning the earth, the body, and the animal into instruments of warmth. Start with their shelters. In La Ferracie, dig patterns revealed not random living pits, but deliberate architecture. Ovoid depressions dug at calculated depths, positioned where rising thermal drafts would circulate through narrow openings. The structure functioned like an ancient geothermal dome. Cold air settled below. Warm breath rose and rebounded from low stone walls, creating a convection loop that maintained livable temperatures even when the surface froze solid. Their walls were lined not with cloth, but with layers of tanned hide, waterproofed using fats extracted from marrow and reinforced with clay. When wet, these hides stiffened into windproof barriers. When dry, they insulated like fiberboard. At Moldova, Ukraine, an entire dwelling was discovered built from 116 mammoth bones, ribs arched into domes, tusks framing doorways, femurs stacked like masonry. These weren't random piles. Each curve, each gap was intentional, a wind-resistant shell that maintained a thermal equilibrium of nearly 60 degrees higher inside while outside temperatures plunged below. In 30 Digfond mathematical, modeling by climatologists later confirmed it. Their bone architecture trapped heat with 90% efficiency, rivaling modern passive heating designs. But the true genius wasn't in the shelter. It was in the system. They turned survival into an equation of redundancies. If fire failed, their bodies became the furnace. If warmth faded, their architecture recycled breath. If food spoiled, the earth itself preserved it. They used cold as a tool, storing meat beneath frozen soil or inside shaded crevices where air circulation kept rot at bay. And when storms made hunting impossible, they survived off rendered marrow fat packed into hide pouches, 9 calories per gram, the ancient equivalent of diesel fuel. Even their tools showed engineering. Brilliance. Flint flakes were aligned along microfracture lines that allowed resharpening with minimal material loss, an efficiency principle now used in aerospace composite design. Every strike of a stone was an algorithm. What they lacked in spark, they replaced with structure. They didn't conquer the Ice Age by warmth. They conquered it by calculation. But the most astonishing revelation came when scientists realized these systems weren't isolated. They were shared, copied, spread across continents like blueprints whispered from one frozen generation to the next. What began in France soon appeared everywhere, as if a single mind had whispered its secrets across the Ice Age world. From Spain's El Cedron cave to the Altai mountains of Siberia, archaeologists uncovered the same eerie fingerprints, the same geometry, the same survival mathematics repeated by hands that never met. At La Ferraci and Kabara, sleeping chambers faced south and southwest, always angled to catch the weak winter sun while shielding against prevailing winds. Thousands of kilometers apart, identical designs. Coincidence? Or communication written in shelter and stone? In Shanidar Cave, Iraq, excavators found semicircular walls of stacked rock, low enough to trap warm air, high enough to ventilate carbon dioxide. Bodies were found sleeping in radial formations, their heads inward, feet outward, a perfect thermal circle designed for shared heat retention. Each breath, each movement, a contribution to the collective warmth. Across the frozen plains of Moldova, Ukraine, domed bone dwellings showed internal zoning, warm upper chambers for sleep, colder lower alcoves for meat storage. At Riparo Bombrini, Italy, evidence of tiered thermal zoning appeared again. Higher ground for rest, middle levels for daily activity, and lower recesses for toolwork, all arranged by airflow logic. Patterns, identical, distances impossible, the same mathematical instincts echoing across thousands of years and thousands of miles. But the most haunting realization came when researchers began running thermal simulations. Even with no fire, these structures maintained ambient temperatures of 57-62 degrees, a consistency modern eco-architects still struggled to achieve without electricity. That's when one anthropologist said what others were too afraid to. This isn't primitive shelter. This is environmental engineering. Neanderthals didn't adapt randomly. They built like nature's apprentices. They studied air, rock, and body heat as data long before the concept of science existed. And then, something extraordinary happened. Their design language spread beyond Neanderthals themselves. In Croatia's Krapina, early Homo sapiens used near-identical stone hearth spacing to circulate heat through narrow corridors. In Siberia's Denisova cave, cross-species habitation layers revealed identical hide processing pits. Knowledge had crossed genetic lines, not just shared through trade, but through memory, imitation, perhaps even interbreeding. Civilization, it seemed, didn't begin with us. It flowed through us, from them. And yet beneath all this precision and logic, there was something deeply human, a pulse of warmth not born of flame, but of care. Because when we look closer at these ruins, we find not only architecture and tools, but touch, tenderness, and the quiet defiance of families who refuse to surrender to the cold. Imagine the icy wind howling over the Dordogne Valley, biting through furs and hides. Inside a carefully dug shelter, a Neanderthal grandmother teaches her granddaughter to waterproof leather using a polished bone tool. Outside, the cold could kill in minutes. Inside, with no fire, the child learns through touch, muscle memory, and observation. Every movement is precise, stretching, rubbing, pressing, motions passed down for tens of thousands of years without a single written word. Nearby, a young boy watches his father secure a domed frame of mammoth bones, adjusting angles, testing stability. He feels the wood spring, learns how air will flow, how heat rises and settles, no errors allowed. Every misstep could mean frostbite or death. A mother arranges insulating layers of grass and hides over sleeping areas. She shows the older children how to lay blocks of stone that will trap heat, block drafts, and funnel airflow. Even the placement of bodies in the sleeping circle is taught. Inward-facing heads to share warmth, feet outward to preserve space. These micro-scenes reveal something profound. Survival was never individual. It was communal, precise, and intergenerational. At Shanidar, archaeologists discovered remains of an elder with a healed but atrophied arm and a blind man. Yet both lived for years, supported by others in their group. Care wasn't optional. It was a necessity built into the very architecture of human society. Elsewhere, at Abric Romani, Spain, hearths and work zones are spaced so each action, grinding, chopping, cooking, contributes to thermal circulation. Children learn this choreography as naturally as walking. Skills are coded into routine, reinforced by family rituals, teaching, and repetition. Even in the coldest storms, humans didn't freeze alone. They shared knowledge, heat, and life. This wasn't just survival. It was engineering compassion into every act. Through these intimate stories, we glimpse the first sparks of civilization, not temples, not cities, not conquest, but care, mentorship, and structured cooperation. And while these acts seem small, their impact was monumental. Life persisted where logic said it shouldn't. But what allowed Neanderthals to survive centuries of extreme winters while fire was unreliable? It wasn't luck. It was biology engineered by evolution, paired with instinctive ingenuity. Start with the nose. CT scans reveal Neanderthal nasal passages were 29% larger than ours, with internal turbinates designed to warm freezing air before it reached the lungs. Breathing became a heat exchange system, reclaiming warmth that would otherwise be lost in sub-zero winds. Their rib cage, barrel-shaped and wide, provided a 50-liter airflow per minute, nearly double modern human capacity. This fueled a metabolic furnace, burning 5,000, 7,000 calories per day in winter, generating continuous internal heat. Even at 20 degrees outside, their core temperature remained stable. Short limbs and broad torsos weren't accidental. They minimized heat loss while maximizing muscular efficiency. Mathematical modeling shows 20% better thermal retention than modern humans. Every anatomical feature was optimized for sustained activity in freezing landscapes. Sweat, glands, and thin hair allowed long work hours without overheating. An advantage over thick-furred predators who had to rest in the cold. Endurance became a superpower, letting humans craft shelters, hunt, and maintain clothing even when fire failed. Fire, when available, was strategically maximized. Hearth placement, thermal circulation, and insulated sleeping zones turned intermittent flames into highly efficient energy systems. When fire was absent, clothing, shelters, and metabolic adaptations took over. Redundancy built into every system. Chemical innovation also played a critical role. At several sites, manganese dioxide was transported up to 40 km to lower wood's ignition temperature, improving fire-starting success. Tanning leather using bovid ribs preserved insulation even in wet, freezing conditions. 3-ply cordage, twisted precisely at 30-degree angles, created durable, layered garments without needles or modern adhesives. And the deeper scientists looked, The more impossible it seemed, Neanderthals had built a complete survival ecosystem, integrating biology, chemistry, and engineering, long before modern humans even existed. To see if Neanderthal innovations were truly effective, modern scientists recreated their entire survival system, shelters, clothing, and fire management, using only materials available to them 60,000 years ago. At the University of Tübingen, a team built reconstructed shelters based on Olduvai-style designs. Stone-anchored thorn-branch domes, layered grass and hide roofing, portable modular design. Volunteers wore reproduced clothing, multi-layered, chemically treated hides and fur, tanned and waterproofed using bovid bones and tree ash as ancient chemical adhesives. The results were astonishing. Indoor temperatures remained 35 to 40 degrees Kelvin warmer than outside, without fire. Core body temperature of volunteers stayed stable at 22 degrees F. Conditions, using only clothing and shelter. Waterproofing using prehistoric leather and fat mixtures outperformed modern beeswax in extreme cold, remaining flexible at 40 degrees and in fire simulations. Hearth placement and spacing created convection currents that circulated heat efficiently. Smoke ventilation minimized suffocation risk while maintaining maximum warmth. Even when fire was absent or extinguished during storms, redundancy in clothing and shelter maintained survival, just as Neanderthals had relied on for tens of thousands of years. Thermal imaging showed precise heat retention, airflow optimization, and energy efficiency comparable to modern passive housing design principles. NASA bioclimatic engineers modeled the shelters digitally. Results confirmed minimal heat loss, optimal ventilation, and temperature stabilization. Across multiple experiments, Europe, Africa, and North America, the same conclusion emerged. Neanderthals weren't merely surviving. They were mastering the environment with precision engineering and biological synergy. It worked, flawlessly. And the deeper researchers looked, the more unbelievable their achievement became. Fire wasn't necessary for survival. Innovation, planning, and physiology did the work. For hundreds of thousands of years, Neanderthals faced a world hostile to life. Ice Age storms, sub-zero temperatures, and unpredictable fires should have destroyed them, yet they endured. Not through luck, not through brute force, but through ingenuity, discipline, and adaptation. Every shelter built, every hearth positioned, every layer of clothing was a calculated act of survival. Every child taught to twist fibers, every adult shaping hides with bovid ribs, every team hauling stones to construct monuments, all expressions of knowledge passed down with precision. Their brilliance wasn't measured in tools or fire alone. It was in systems, how clothing, shelter, body heat, and chemical ingenuity merged into a resilient survival network. Even in total darkness, deep in caves like Bruniquel, their architecture maintained temperature, provided lighting, and created social cohesion. They weren't just living. They were engineering life itself. Consider modern parallels. Today, billions face extreme climates, and we often rely on technology and infrastructure to survive. Yet Neanderthals teach us that adaptation and knowledge sharing can outperform brute resources. Their multi-layered survival strategies, insulation, thermal engineering, chemical innovation, cooperative labor, are lessons in resilience, planning, and foresight. This legacy is not just historical. It lives in our genes and instincts. The 2–4% of Neanderthal DNA present in modern humans may carry fragments of this ingenuity. Our ancestors' survival strategies echo in how we design shelters in deserts, polar regions, and even Mars simulations. Ultimately, their greatest invention wasn't fire, stone, or shelter. It was refusing to accept impossibility. They faced winters that could kill a modern human in hours. They endured fireless months, predators, and starvation, and yet they adapted, innovated, and thrived. As we face climate extremes, resource scarcity, and global crises today, the question remains, will we rise to the challenge with the same ingenuity, cooperation, and resilience as our ancient cousins? Because survival isn't about the tools we hold. It's about the vision, intelligence, and determination to turn an impossible world into a place where life can endure.